Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today for SME's Manufacturing Technology Series webinar. In today's webinar, the Industry 4.0 Workforce Needs, Issues, and Solutions, we will hear how today's manufacturers across the United States frequently mention how the lack of a skilled workforce is their #1 issue. Fast-paced automation and the lack of training are main factors. Today, our expert panel will address these issues and share insights on programs and activities that are underway to help U.S. manufacturers compete globally with a skilled and ready workforce. I'm Carl Mitroff, MT Series Content Manager, and thank you for joining us. Before we get going, I just have a few housekeeping issues I want to talk about. You'll recognize that your microphones are automatically muted. If you have questions regarding the webinar functionality, please use the chat feature. If you have technical questions that you'd like to ask our panelists, and our moderator, you can submit them using the Q&A box. We'll be monitoring both. And in the event of any technical glitches that might happen, please be aware that we are recording this webinar and we will make it available on our MT Series website in about 24 hours. Moderating today's webinar is Ms. Susie Teal. Susie joined the ARM Institute shortly after its formation in 2017 as the head of marketing and communications. She has been actively involved in conceptualizing and delivering workforce solutions and services in addition to her communication activities. Thank you, Susie, for moderating today's webinar. I really appreciate it. Thanks for helping develop, and I'll kick it off to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon and to have the opportunity to address, as you pointed out, one of the most significant issues that we hear on a daily basis from manufacturers across the United States. And that is finding people with the right skills to work in their manufacturing environments. In fact, this challenge has become even more prevalent as a result of the pandemic. There is much more focus on our manufacturing capabilities, our manufacturing needs in the United States, and there probably has been for several years. And so I'm very delighted to have worked with you to kick off this series, the MT series, to focus on an important issue, which is the workforce itself. So I'd like to turn it over to the panel in a minute, and they will introduce themselves. But I'm very excited about this panel. And the reason why I'm excited is because I think we all know when we're looking at a large issue like this, like manufacturing and the manufacturing workforce, it's important to have as many representatives and as many people from different areas as possible to try to solve this issue, because it is a big issue. And so I'm very delighted to let you know that we have a representative from the Department of Labor, Robin Fernkiss, who can give us a government perspective and a Department of Labor perspective. We have one of the most talented educators that I've had the opportunity to work with, Scott Lucas, who's put together an incredibly impressive program to address this specific issue that we're just talking about, and he'll share what he's done. And then finally, my partner in crime, Elisa Massantonio, also from the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Institute. Lisa's our Chief Workforce Officer, and she helps lead all of our initiatives around workforce across the 300-plus member consortium. And so here we have a consortium representative, an educational representative, and a government representative, all sharing perspectives on some of the challenges that they're tackling, but even most importantly, how they're solving those challenges. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Robin. Each of the three of them will give a little bit of background about what they're working on, and then we will move into your questions and answers. So please send those along because we'd love to answer those questions. So Robin, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Great, thanks, Susie. I'm really delighted to be here and very excited to share information about our resources. We have, as it says here on our slide, about $3 billion that we invest annually in programs that make up what we call the public workforce system. And we are very aware that that's a small piece of what is the broader workforce development system, because a lot of you and your businesses are investing in a lot of that training every year. But I think all of us can agree that this has been a really extraordinarily challenging time for our nation's economy. Prior to the pandemic, it wasn't uncommon for us to be hearing or seeing through our data at the U.S. Department of Labor over 1 million job vacancies, and having employers tell us that they were experiencing skills gaps or mismatches between their open jobs and the skills in their workforce. We know that today that challenge exists, along with a lot of others that you've been experiencing, having come through the pandemic and are looking to recover on the other side. So if we go to the next slide, I'll stay on this one, but I did want to tell you a little bit about our programs are designed to help employers find workers to fill their current demand. We also have programs to help upskill or reskill workers who may need to retrofit their skills to remain competitive. And we also have programs that are focused on building a pipeline of new workers to backfill those retiring and leaving the labor market. We know there's a ton of older workers that are about to retire, and this is a huge workforce issue for a lot of businesses. Our U.S. Department of Labor does fund a network of 2,400 American Job Centers, and they're located across the country to assist thousands of businesses in recruiting, hiring, training, or upskilling their workforce. And so I'll tell you before the end of this presentation how to find those centers if you haven't, availed yourself of those resources yet. These centers also help job seekers get training and find good jobs. The centers are overseen by workforce development boards that are led by private sector business representatives who set the priorities for their communities for the training investments to meet their regional labor market demands. So that's also an avenue if you're interested in getting involved in your community, checking out participating on your workforce development board or on a committee. Each of our American Job Centers does have business service representatives that offer a range of customized training options to meet your needs. These AJCs, as we call them for short, for the American Job Centers, provide information about local and federal resources to assist with business decisions such as your marketing decisions or economic development opportunities. And we know that you're looking to recruit workers with specific skills, and often these job centers can help with setting up job fairs. They can do some initial screening for you. So we will, again, just encourage you to get connected to your American Job Center or your local workforce development boards. If we go to the next slide, just looking at some of the challenges, I think you probably are in a better position to tell me what the challenges are, but we do know from the current economic indicators that there's really a complex picture right now. On the one hand, we're seeing a historic number of people who are still applying for and need unemployment insurance. And despite declining unemployment rates, we're also hearing from our employers who are they have job openings, but they're having a hard time hiring people quickly enough to address their rapidly changing needs. And I think one trend that we've seen, and particularly why we're here today, is just an uptick in automation that happened during the pandemic. And so that means, as you all know, that these certain jobs require a different skill set than maybe that your current workforce currently has. And so an increased proficiency in math or digital literacy skills to work in this increasingly digitized environment. So many businesses are adjusting to this environment. They're finding, that they need to update the skills of their current workforce. And I just wanted to say that the public workforce system does offer incumbent worker training services to help businesses reskill their workforce. Some of this is in the form of reimbursement for some of the extraordinary cost of training. So there's some money available for that. Some of it's arranging for customized training so that the cost to the employees of going through the training is covered, through the American Job Centers. One of our premier upskilling strategies is registered apprenticeship. And so we have helped job seekers connect to those registered apprenticeship programs, but we also work with employers who are looking to either sponsor an apprenticeship or, interested in forming an apprenticeship program in their business. If we go to the next slide, I just wanted to show you one of our workforce solutions, which is an industry competency model. We do hear, particularly from some of the high skill and in-demand industry sectors, that there can be a disconnect between what their needs are for skills training and what the existing educational curricula is. And so to address these challenges, the Department of Labor works with industry associations, educational institutions, and others to develop industry competency models as the starting point for some of these workforce development initiatives and sector partnerships. These models are made available through our Competency Model Clearinghouse portal, which is within our Career One Stop .org site, and I'll tell you a little more about that at the end of the presentation. But presently, we certainly have 25 such models. Right here, this is the mechatronics competency model, which I thought might be of interest to you, but we have a model on automation, and we have one that we just completed with the semiconductor industry on electronic technicians. So, but what we are hoping these models are useful for is helping you use them as the basis for either building a registered apprenticeship program or, again, building a customized training program or some type of career pathway initiative that you may be undertaking. So developing these competency models is one way of ensuring that our education and training is really aligned with industry needs and hoping that we can attract more students and job seekers to careers in advanced manufacturing. So my final slide, as I've been mentioning, gives you these web links to these resources that I've mentioned. Because underpinning, all of our quality training and education programs is really a robust labor market information system. And we have, through our careeronestop.org website, you can find labor market and career information links to, many different types of state and local labor exchange services, as well as information on transferable skills for displaced workers who need to change careers. We also provide extensive occupational data through our ONET site, which is accessible through our careeronestop.org site. And this, again, with the competency models, really helps articulate the skills and competencies needed for a cluster of occupations. So I hope that you'll engage with your state and local workforce development boards as your strategic partners, and that you'll use the many resources available to you through our nation's American Job Centers. So working collaboratively, I think we can respond to the demand that you're experiencing and offer you some dynamic job training solutions.
Thank you, Robin. Again, just want to reinforce what Robin said. There's a tremendous number of resources and help that's available through the Department of Labor, and it would be important for you to note these, and I know that they will be part of the recorded webinar, just in case, which will be sent to all of you, just in case you didn't get a chance to write those down. So thank you again, Robin. At this point, I'd like to turn things over to Scott Lucas, and he can give us his perspective being out there in the field and preparing the workforce for manufacturers today. So Scott?
Thanks, Susie. Yeah, just a little background. My name's Scott Lucas. I'm the Vice President for Aviation, Manufacturing, and Institutional Effectiveness at WSU Tech. We got a real long title, but WSU Tech works great. Located right in the middle of the country, Wichita. We are a 2-year public technical college. We are affiliated with Wichita State University. It's kind of a unique model of how higher education is done. But since we are a 2-year technical college, we still really live by our mission of providing opportunities for those technician level, entry level jobs, pretty much across the board. And so I spend a lot of my day focusing on what does that look like in aviation, in manufacturing, and a lot here lately, focusing on what does that mean for Industry 4.0. And so we were fortunate enough a little over a decade ago to move into a facility called the National Center for Aviation Training here in Wichita. And that facility, it's over 200,000 square feet. We've developed specific programs that went into that facility that really focused on advanced manufacturing on Industry 4 over a decade ago, specifically for robotics, industrial automation, non-destructive testing, coatings and paint, specifically for this facility, as well as some of the traditional machining, design, and then some aviation programs that are really specific to Wichita. Overall, what NCAT, National Center for Aviation Training, what it provides is it's the model for how industry, education, and government came together to work together to focus on a regional training center for our workforce and really for our industry's future. So what happened was industry came together as a group, and essentially you had CEOs and other folks come together, and they worked all day, and then they came at the end of the day and took their CEO hats off and said, we have to focus on training. And this was, baby boomers were coming to the end, and we had to do something about it. There was no real training center for aviation manufacturing at that time, and they really got together and pushed for a specific training center for that. Well, then they got government involved, and so the actual facility that I'm in sits on land that was donated by the city of Wichita. And then the county that we're in actually built this building, passed a mill levy to build the building. And then the state of Kansas actually kind of pitched in and threw in grant funds that really put the equipment, the infrastructure within the building that helped kind of expand everything that we do. And it continues to this day with that as far as the funding aspect of that, to really make sure and to ensure that we have that funding to match what's really happening, what's going out there. So we have what's going on at the 2-year sector, and then Wichita State has the National Institute for Aviation Research. NIAR has some facilities out here, and we get to work together with them. So it really provides a good environment for our students to kind of work hand in hand like they would in the industry, to do kind of their entry level work, their technician level work, and then work with this research arm in certain labs at the same time, just to get that experience. But at the technical college, what we really focus on is the stackable curriculum up to the 2-year level. Stackable meaning we provide exit points for students that really match the skill set that they need in order to find employment. So if that is a semester, or in credit hour terms, is that 18 credit hours? Is that enough to get them a job and to get them out? Then that's kind of step one. And then we build upon that, and then build upon that up to the associate degree. And so for each program, we take that aspect of where are those stackable points that allow for entry into employment, or to continue their education up to that certain point, and then being partners with the affiliation with WSU, then ultimately it does allow for transferability if a student wants to continue up, that possibility is there. The other thing that we've done is we've connected our students to validate, to provide options for them through third-party credentials. The one that we've done the most with is with NC3, which is the National Coalition of Certification Centers. We've really connected our programs in with NC3. NC3 credentials are brought forth, the curriculum, the validation is done by industry. And so when you take one for manufacturing specifically, is most of our manufacturing programs have some element of precision measuring built into the programs, and the certification and the credentialing through precision measuring is all validated through Starrett. Well, Starrett makes the precision measuring equipment that we use. And so we take that, and that NC3 curriculum and credential is built into those programs, and it is all developed and sponsored by Starrett. So we've done that. The other side of it is thinking through the pipeline of where these students have come from. We've really invested a ton of resources and energy in developing our partnerships with local high schools, regional high schools, to get this dual credit opportunity so we can map high school students. So really thinking, ninth grade through our 2 years of what opportunities are there for students in the state of Kansas. Next slide, please. So as we think through Industry 4 specifically, the challenges that we focus here in our area is, really we kind of look at these questions. And so we think of, well, what's the best for industry? So when we do that, we really have to kind of dive in and know what's our specific market here. And in Wichita, we are the aviation capital of the world. And so we know that we start there, but it doesn't necessarily end there. So we know specifically for Industry 4, it's diverse. So one day we could be talking to food service manufacturing, and the next day we're talking to agricultural manufacturing, and then we have 3 days of aviation manufacturing. And each of those may have a variety of needs. So we have to adjust that and just know from a technician level, going back to what Robin said as far as what those competencies are, we're trying to look at what's the best needs as we translate what their needs are to what that looks like at the technician level and what we can provide for them. So when we talk about the segment needs, we're looking specifically at, well, what does that look like for aviation manufacturing? What does that look like when we look at for welding? So is that a specific welding process? And so are they wanting MIG welders, or is this specifically someone that needs more arc welding or TIG welding? And so that's part of it. But then we also spend quite a bit of time looking at supply chains. We have to consider what small, medium-sized businesses really need, because they truly are the food chain when it comes to really who our students are, because frankly, there is a large number of our students that we know are not going to go to these big OEM manufacturers. They're going to go work in the supply chain first and really kind of chew their teeth and get their experience, and that's where they're going to go for. So then the next question we ask as far as challenges, well, what's the best approach to instruction? And that's really, honestly, probably where we spend the most time for that. And it really starts with us, which is teachers. And we struggle with that because ultimately we're still education, and I'm a public institution. I don't pay my folks ultimately what industry pays. So there's always this give and take of trying to find the right fit to be a teacher, because I one of the things that I really push for my teachers is having that industry experience. So connecting to the right person that is at the twilight of their career, or maybe they're retired military, so they're looking for a second option, or there's some other thing where ultimately they want to kind of give back, where they want to leave a legacy, or sometimes on the younger side of things where they do maybe love teaching. So it's connecting that. The other thing specifically with Industry 4 is trying to match that equipment and trying to match that technology that's really kind of driving some of this change. And because we're at the National Center for Aviation Training, we feel extremely fortunate that we've been able to keep up with that, specifically in our robotics lab and our industrial automation lab. Even if you think, even in welding, in manufacturing Industry 4, the process itself hasn't changed. But I tell you right now that we have changed the way we teach welding. And we feel like that change is beneficial to students. We've partnered with Lincoln Electric on how they've done curriculum, how they've done change, and we've really seen the benefits for our students. And so method, approach, pandemic has changed some of that, but it always is, what's the best way to provide that instruction? So then it kind of funnels down to, what can we afford as a public institution? I only get a little bit from the state. We can only put so much back on the students. So we do have to gauge with that. Robin's group, Robin's resources, state resources, those are things that we always have to consider. And then where are the students? And that's one that for some programs like machining, especially in Wichita, or for aerospace sheet metal workers, most of the families around here kind of know what that is. But when it says, when we want a maintenance and reliability technician, there's not a lot of knowledge of what that really means. So we're trying to find ways to encourage high school and really develop that pipeline of getting that knowledge in. So next slide, please. So as we really focus on solutions, what's best for industry is the ARM Institute provided us some assistance that as we looked at what could we really do. I mean, we just spent time working with folks in industry and learning from those folks of what Industry 4 really meant from them. And the honest answer in our region, it was the gamut. We found some companies were extremely highly technical, highly roboticized, highly automated. And then we found the other side of it, which, the frankness of it, it looked like you had walked into 1980s still. But the great news was those companies had recognized that and knew that this was coming, this was the approach. And so we get to be involved in those conversations from a technician level again to say, we can help you get there, just let us know. And so that's really kind of feeds into what's the best approach for instruction. The solution for us then is, then we ran into COVID and pandemic, and we had to go hybrid and go online for 3 months. And that's created, I'm not going to say it has stopped things for us, but it has shifted the way we've had to think through instruction. And the honest answer is, I think that's going to stay. I mean, that's not going to go anywhere. So the way we teach now is going to change. Now that provides flexibility. So what does that mean for us is it gives our instructors flexibility to learn more, to plan more, and it gives students flexibility to potentially work. As a technical college, most of your 2-year schools are like this. Our traditional student isn't 18 and 19. Our traditional student is 25 or 26. So they're juggling a family or a job or something else. So it does, a hybrid schedule does give them the flexibility to do that. So what can we afford to do? We have to invest in Industry 4 because we know workforce, we know you guys are investing in that. So as education, to stay with that, we have to be flexible, we have to be nimble, and we have to keep up with you when it comes to that training. So we have to continue to do that as well. So looking for those grants, looking for those opportunities to partner with industry on where that can happen. And then again, so where are the students? Working through those high school pipelines, developing those relationships with those high schools, high school robotics. So if it's BEST or if it's FIRST or if it's VEX, there's all these exciting things going on, elementary, middle school with robotics programs. So we've started to do that. And then the other thing is we've really focused on applied learning models. And for us, Robin mentioned registered apprenticeships, and in Kansas, we're not quite there, but ultimately focusing on other options. So whether that's earn and learn models where, students are working part-time with manufacturers, maybe not in their specific job role, but at least having a job, those are options that we can leverage. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. As I mentioned, Scott's model in Kansas is one of the best that we've seen in the country of government, industry, and academia working together to really solve the needs of industry. So thank you for that, Scott. And last but certainly not least, we'll go to Lisa Massiantonio. She's the Army Institute's Chief Workforce Officer, and she'll share a little bit about the work that our consortium is doing in this area.
Thank you, Susie. Hi, everybody. Yes, so I am with the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Institute. We are one of 16 national institutes that were brought together to help to raise the state of the practice for manufacturing across the country. And our core goal is to strengthen U.S. manufacturing through innovations in robotics and automation and workforce development. And we were very fortunate to be the 14th of the 16 institutes because we were then able to leverage the lessons from the earlier institutes. We were formed in 2017. And one of the key challenges that all of the other institutes told us is you can't solve technological problems without thinking about the workforce. So it is equal in importance as the technological evolution because technology, particularly with robotics and automation, is going to continue to evolve, and it's very, very fast-paced. And so we are really focused on making sure that the workforce keeps on pace with those technological advancements, not just for now, but for the future as well. And Robin talked a lot about the skills gap or the mismatch. And I think a lot of that has to do that the training is not necessarily keeping up with how fast technology is changing. And so the workforce not only is they're not afforded the opportunity to find that training to keep on pace, but they don't know exactly what training they ought to be taking to keep current. And manufacturing careers, they no longer look like they once did. They are very high tech. They're not as dull and dirty and dangerous as they once were. But that has to require a mindset shift for those individuals in that you're not going to get into a manufacturing career and stay on a current pathway and just get better at that one activity that you do. It's going to have to be a lifelong learning journey because of the way that the manufacturers are now automating and using more robotic capabilities. And so in the next couple of slides, I'll talk to you about, as a national institute, how we're leveraging our strong ecosystem. As Susie said, we've got actually over 300 member organizations who help to influence those decisions and help to provide the analysis on those needs and where we ought to be investing to help solve problems, not only just from the industrial-based manufacturers, but also for the training programs themselves for a lot of our nonprofits. Very important that we're looking at the needs of the government, our union representatives, and everybody else in our ecosystem. All of their opinions weigh equally. And so it's, as you can imagine, a big challenge to start to create things and to develop capabilities that are really helping all of those key audiences in our ecosystem. Can you go to the next slide, please, Ricky? All right, so here are the key workforce challenges that we set off to start to influence or to create things to solve. I don't think it's a big surprise for anybody that with the fast pace of the Industry 4.0 careers, the U.S. education hasn't kept up with those needs across the board. Some places are doing a great job And we want to leverage those and find those best practices and see how we can share them with other parts of the country or other sectors that it would be relevant for. Those negative perceptions of robotics in manufacturing for many, many years, parents and guidance counselors have been telling people, don't go into the field of manufacturing. You saw all of the manufacturing jobs leave, and you want to go for a 4-year degree. The other thing is a lot of people look at what used to be with that dirty and dull and dangerous environment, and people don't realize what automation brings to the quality of life when you get into these career pathways. The small and medium manufacturers still to this day, they don't have a lot of resources to bring training in, to move people through career pathways, nor do they really have the capability to take people off the line. It will slow down their productivity. And so those kinds of problems for the small and medium manufacturers continue to cause them to not be able to move people forward sensibly in their various career pathways to make them more productive in the end game. The manufacturing workforce typically is not prepared for continuing the reskilling. And that's what I talked about a few minutes ago, is it's the mindset that it's really a lifelong learning journey. And you can't just take training for training's sake. You really need to understand what competencies will strengthen your foothold, as well as improve the activities within your employer's needs. There's very little coordination between initiatives in Industry 4.0, and I think that's one of the key reasons why all of the institutes were formed, and that's one of the key values as a national institute, that we can help to be that coordinator. And I'll talk in a little bit about some of the capabilities that we have invested in to help that with that coordination factor. And then finally, the regional skill gaps in manufacturing. That's what I had talked about a little while ago, is that the technologies simply are outpacing that of the workforce. And so you've got people who have a mismatch as well as not enough people in those jobs, which is ultimately slowing down productivity for the manufacturers. And it's significant. So when we've interviewed our employer base, some of your large contractors are maybe 12,000, 13,000 individuals short on their robotic technician capabilities. And some of our smaller folks, they've got 12 to 20, which really slows down their ultimate productivity and throughput. And so we want to help to be part of that solution set too. Can you move to the next slide, please? All right, so here's a set of solutions that ARM has invested in, or we're intending to invest in the upcoming year. And these are based on the input from people in our ecosystem and our Education and Workforce Development Advisory Committee. Both Scott and Robin, I'm blessed to have both of them helping to advise us to make sure when we're making these investments on behalf of the Department of Defense and across all of the institutes, that they are worthwhile and that they're serving all of our ecosystem. So the first thing that we looked at was, where are the biggest parts of the challenge? When robotics and automation come about, you've got problems from kindergarten up through the retirement age, but the biggest part of those gaps seems to be at the robotic technician level. And so we intentionally started focusing on the robotic technician in manufacturing with a capability that we know we can expand to other parts of the job sphere. And so we've got a very robust Industry 4.0 competency framework where it looks at the foundational needs of the robotic technician and what kind of capabilities and competencies people would see in that job description. And by no means are we saying that everybody has to be skilled in all of them. It's just giving guidelines to the education seekers and the employees, as well as the employers, about what are those foundational skills. Then how do you take those skills and move up and become more proficient in a specialized manner? And so we've got the robotic specialist with a little bit more advanced skills. And then ultimately, one of the biggest challenges is people told us, it's great, I bought this robot and I thought it was going to be my savior. And once the integrator, the outside integrator left, I don't know how to use it and it's collecting dust. I don't know how to advance it, so it's holding me back again. And so it's really important for these organizations to establish a part of the robotic technician pathway that those individuals would become the internal integrator with some of those higher skills. And then you need to understand what soft skills that people have, those essential skills that individuals have, like teaming and management and all of those essential skills that map into that competency framework, leading to those 3 career pathways that I just described. Another need in the community was, please don't go out and create a lot of robotic training because it already exists, but we don't know where it exists and which of those competencies it maps to. And so we have recently launched a new national capability called RoboticsCareerorg, which is in essence an asset map of all of the programs across the country. It represents about 10,000 robotic technician programs from about 1,200 organizations, and it's free for anybody to use. And I also encourage anybody to get your training programs in there. If you go to RoboticsCareerorg, up in the upper right-hand corner, you can click Add My Program. So if your training program is not in there, I strongly encourage everybody to get yours in there, and it will map directly to those competencies in our competency framework. Along those same lines, people said, it's great that there are 10,000 programs in there. Can you tell me, based on a certain set of criteria, which are the best of the best? Which are representative ones, if I wanted to adopt something, should I be looking for? So at the same time that the RoboticsCareer.org platform became live to everybody, we also launched our ARM endorsement program, where it's almost like a formal ISO audit, where there are very stringent measures that we guide the organizations through. We audit them, and if they meet all of the major criteria and the minor criteria, they get an ARM stamp of approval, and they show up as such in their own marketing collateral on their website, but also in RoboticsCareer.org. When people seek, they show up on top. We're in the midst right now of evaluating a proof of concept for how might you be able to take people who have been in the field for a long time but don't have those badges or credentials or resume builders, and permit them to, if you will, place out through some kind of a virtual assessment where they then would get an ARM credential to show that they might be proficient in fluid power understanding, electrical systems, any of those competencies in those robotic careers that I had mentioned earlier. Another key need that becomes ever more important coming out of the crisis of the pandemic is job matchmaking. I already told you, people are telling us I have 12,000 open jobs and I don't know how to find the individuals, and the individuals are saying, I now have these capabilities and I don't know how to find the jobs. We want to be able to somehow map their needs together, and through our national capability be able to do that job matchmaking, which then would make sense for these individuals to start to have their own personal career track in a platform that is centered around the competencies and their progression through their manufacturing careers. Can you go to the next one?
So at this, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. At this point, we're going to transition over and show a video that just describes a little bit of what you've been talking about this national capability. Again, RoboticsCareerorg was federally funded. It's available at no cost for anybody to use. It's focused on United States educational programs. And take a quick look at the video that will give you a little bit more background.
A recent report by the Manufacturing Institute showed that nearly 500,000 exciting, well-paying manufacturing jobs are currently unfilled. This intrigues Sam, who'd love to find a meaningful career that he can be proud of. But this is what Sam pictures when he thinks of manufacturing. While today, it's more like this. That same study found that by 2025, the number of unfilled manufacturing jobs could spike to well over 3 million. With so much opportunity, Laura finds it hard to believe that students aren't flocking to the educational institute where she works. How does she find Sam to tell him about their amazing programs? Other sources predict that industry growth, combined with pending retirements over the next decade, could negatively affect manufacturing output in the United States, unless employers can find enough people with the technical skills to work in their modern, automated factories. This is not good news for Darius, a manufacturer who needs good workers to keep pace with demand. But how does Darius find out about Laura's programs that can upskill his existing workers and help him connect with Sam? Only RoboticsCareerorg connects people with industry-vetted education programs for a career in robotics. The connections built here will create the U.S. manufacturing workforce needed for today's factories and those of the future.
Well, hopefully that will give you a little bit of background about what we're working on at the ARM Institute with our partners, Robin and Scott, and 300 or so other partners that to really help solve this issue. It's a big issue. It's a big challenge. There are a lot of needs everywhere. But hopefully you've heard today, between the work that the Department of Labor is doing and the significant amount of effort that they're putting in helping all of you with set up pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship programs, helping you find the right workers, helping you understand what kind of skills our manufacturers are looking for that can help both people who are looking for employees and who are searching for jobs as well. And then with Scott, hopefully you've seen a model that's very impressive that would be great to be duplicated in every state in the United States, right? Where industry and government and academia work together to make sure that they are training and producing quality workers for the industries in their region. And then last, you heard from Lisa, who working at ARM Institute, we're all trying to sort of build upon all these challenges and say, where can we add value to help solve some of these issues without duplicating efforts, the great efforts that others are doing, like Scott and like Robin at their organizations. And so that's really what our goal was today, was to share with you many different ways that you can turn, because we know that this is a challenging problem, and we know that there are a lot of what we wanted to make you aware of is a lot of the resources that are available to help you today with this challenging problem. And so what I want to do right now is turn things over to the Q&A. And one question that did come up was relative to, and we'll go ahead and answer it in person. I know that some of you have responded, but relative to folks who have been incarcerated and how employment programs can work with them. So Robin, I know you provided an answer online. Do you want to expand a little bit more about some of the work the Department of Labor does in this area?
Sure, and I think Scott can tell you how this works on the ground, but we have several resources, one of which I did put into the chat, which is our federal bonding program. And this is basically an insurance policy that we provide to individuals who are transitioning from incarceration back into employment. It gives employers some peace of mind that, you know, if they take the risk of hiring someone with this background, if for some reason, tools go missing or, for whatever, if they're, for worst case scenario, I guess, if something were to happen, that this bond would cover the cost of replacing those things, or provide some financial assistance to the employers. On sort of the more positive end of things, we do have some training programs, and we do provide some competitive grants, both focused on adult individuals who need training. That's our Pathways Home grants, and for youth and young people. And those grants, our youth partnership grants, are given out to a lot of them are community-based organizations partnering with community colleges or technical colleges to really build programs around helping these individuals get skills to get back into the workforce. And so our grants.gov website has the information about the grants, but I'd be happy to provide some specific information. And Scott, maybe you have availed yourself of that grant money, or have some other programs.
Not that specifically, but I think the concept of finding some programming and leveraging that programming is important. So we partner with just Goodwill Industries here in Wichita for a program called Unlocked, and they support the individuals essentially outside of the classroom. They provide life skills. They really kind of do that support outside. And these are folks that are either paroled or on probation, and then they actually come to us to do a full-blown welding program, specifically for manufacturing, and it's been extremely successful. But I know there are other programs in the state. There are other manufacturing-specific programs in the state where we're actually doing manufacturing training actually in the prisons. And part of that is Federal Department of Education provided called Second Chance Pell opportunity for those individuals to leverage some federal dollars to go to school. Some of that's not available, so they just kind of paid out of pocket through Family Dollars or different things. So there are opportunities for those individuals to gain the education aspect, to go through that. Ultimately, what we have found is, it still kind of boils down to the employer, and it's up to the employer, it's up to the policy on whether they can employ them or not. There are some facets of, what was the felony. There are some contracts of, depending on some different things, that there are some you can't, depending on international work or military work or some different things. But other than that, it still kind of boils down to the employer and what you're comfortable with. But we've been successful with certain programs that we've done.
Thank you, Scott. Lisa, anything you'd like to add to that question?
No, I would just mirror what both Scott and Robin said. We know from the projects that we have funded out in the field that is a great resource to help people get the training and to move into these great career opportunities.
Okay, thank you all. Another question I'd like to throw out there is, based on your conversations with manufacturers, what are the top skills that they're looking for right now? Scott, maybe I can start with you on that.
Yeah, so right now we probably kind of have the two ends. Is that we still have a segment that's looking for just basic skill, basic manufacturing technician level, but then now we have shifted to truly an industry 4 look for individuals that have some programming, the ability to do some PLC work, some, a little bit of troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is kind of a thing. So what we have done is to actually create a pathway where it's the continuum. So an individual could start a program just as a basic manufacturing tech. So they learn just basic hands-on skills, tool skills, the ability to operate a press brake, but then they kind of progress through CNC, different things, and then if they want to get into some electronics, and then if they want to get into some programming and PLCs, so at least the opportunities are there. And I really think that's all we can do is provide those students the opportunities, and then if they choose to walk through that door, that's there, and then obviously we can do that. But the need is there. I mean, really the employment need is there, and that's really what we're seeing. So, I mean, I think the other part of it is there's this underlying foundation, and Lisa spoke to it too. When we develop competency specifically for robotics tech, it lives in every tech, and that tech is the workplace skills. So the fact of soft skills, work ethics, whatever you want to call them, they're there, and they're there in every level of technician. They're there for every engineer. It doesn't matter. They're there. And so we've taken that and we've really bought into that at our institution, that every single one of our programs gets that in two different ways and two different methods, because we've done it because we heard you guys say you need it. You were tired of it. You were tired of trying to do it. So we're trying to do it in education as much as we can to develop those employability skills and really try to build that as much as we can. And so we partnered with Mike Rowe, and developed a program that we've integrated and partnered with the Koch Foundation. And now that's transitioned to NC3, and that's now an official credential. And so, I mean, I think that's just a pathway, a skill set that has to live in everything we do now.
Thank you, Scott. And it's just as we had one last comment that just said, thank you for reinforcing, again, all the speakers have done this, that not everyone needs a 4-year degree in order to be successful and have a meaningful career, that programs like yours, programs that offer credentialing, can give you just as meaningful of a career and a great middle-class income as what you might get through other programs that require 4-year degrees. Unfortunately, at this point, we are out of time. I think most of most of our panelists have done a really nice job of responding to your questions as they came through and typing them in through chat. We did not get to all of them, but we do want to be respectful of your time and the webinar on time. I hope this webinar has really provided you with some actionable items. That was our goal, that you could go back and work on to try and address this challenge, whether you're in academia, whether you're in manufacturing, or whether you're in government. And at this point, I'd like to thank Robin and Scott and Lisa for their participation on the panel and turn things back over to Carl. But thank you again for your time.
Hi, yes, thank you, Lisa, and thank you, everyone, and another group of panelists for your time this afternoon and participating with us. Again, we will be recording, or we have recorded this program, and we'll make it available so you can use that as a resource after the fact. Very informative, great discussion today. Again, thanks for everyone for participating. It's a very challenging time I think we're all facing, and we recognize that the workforce is critical to the success of the manufacturing industry. So thank you, Lisa and Scott and Robin and Susie, for investing your time with us this afternoon. And of course, a very special thanks to all of our attendees who participated today. We'll be sending out a quick survey shortly to all who attended, and would appreciate your feedback on what you thought of today's webinar. And finally, be sure to join us for our next webinar series on June 10th at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll present the next MT series, Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence for Manufacturing Operations. Registration for that webinar is now open, and it is live. So if you're interested in that, feel free to go on our MT series webpage. And again, thanks everyone for your time. We really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Carl.
Bye-bye. Thank you as well.